Ice Cave Radio is proudly sponsored by Invasion Comics and Cards. Located in Richmond Hill, Ontario, just minutes north of Toronto, Invasion carries one of the largest inventories of Star Wars Unlimited singles, and yes, we're shipping all across North America. Invasion hosts a wide array of events from weekly casual play to higher stakes tournaments. Go to invasioncnc.ca and use code ICECAVE5 to score 5% off your Star Wars Unlimited singles and 3% off Star Wars Unlimited sealed product.
Hey everybody, welcome to a very special episode of Ice Cave Radio. And it's special in a lot of ways, Charmer. One, because it's just you and I. Flake is in Japan for the Flesh and Blood Part the Mistveil release, unveiling. What do you want to call it? It sounds like a ton of fun. Looking forward to that. But we're here to talk about some Star Wars Unlimited. And while we do, we're also both sick right now. So this might be a bit of a zany episode. Who knows what either of us are going to say, but we wanted to power through it because there's so much to talk about. I feel like if there's like a bar that fills up, an XP bar or something for the lifespan of a bad cold, I'm at like, and if the peak is like 50%, that's when it's the worst. I'm at like 75% right now, I think. So I'm kind of starting to come out the other side, but it's still a little bit rough. So I might be like snorting and coughing and doing all this stuff. And I might sound like a Muppet, like a Bert or something, because I feel nasally. I feel congested. But you're feeling ill in a completely different manner. Why don't you tell us about that?
I mean, I have had some pretty severe bowel issues for like the past 2 days. My wife, she works in the front office of an elementary school. And
oh boy.
It's one of those things where you don't really think about the levels of exposure until you're in the job. But every time that a kid is sick, they come to the office to call home and talk to their parents. And so they are sharing my wife's phone, doing all the things. So she caught something, woke up in the middle of the night, like 2 nights ago, really ill. And then I'm riding it. No. But I've also had, I think mine is just allergies or something. I have had some head congestion. So part 2 of this, Doa, is that I know you said before we started recording you had to stay close to the cough button. I need to not sneeze because I've blown my nose so much in the past 2 days that now every time I blow it, I have a bloody nose just from all of the whatever. I'm prone to bloody noses anyway because I broke my nose twice when I was younger doing really dumb things. So yeah, you just need to not cough and I need to not sneeze. All right. And we will be fine.
Yeah, it's my 10-month-old daughter has picked up. My wife's sick too, and somehow she's not yet. I hope she stays unsick. That would be amazing. But like, she has started to copy our coughing. Like, she's not actually coughing, but we'll cough, and then she'll look at us and be like, and I'm like, hey, that's kind of mean. Way to rub it in, kid. But yeah, what can you do?
They're starting at a young age.
I guess so. Well,
believe it or not,
believe it or not,
this is a Star Wars Unlimited podcast.
It is. It's true. And go ahead.
I was just going to say quickly, and it's brought to all of you by a sponsor.
That's right.
I didn't know if that's where you were transitioning.
It was
like, all right, I don't have an emergency pack, so I'll try to rein it.
It was. We'd like to shout out to our proud sponsor, very proud after that intro, I'm sure, Invasion Comics and Cards, north of Toronto. Go to invasioncnc.ca for all of your North American card gaming needs. They do indeed ship to the United States of America. So if you're not in Canada, don't worry. You may have a hard time finding good poutine where you are, but you don't have a hard time finding good card and comic supplies online. You can do that at invasioncnc.ca. There you go. I read it over there to make sure I got it right.
If you're having a hard time remembering the URL, first of all, you should just favorite it like I did. But also,
Perfect.
It's the store name is Invasion Comics and Cards. So in my head, it's Invasion Comics and Cards, right? So that's the CNC part, and then .ca because they're in Canada. But the good news is, if you use IceCave5 at checkout, you get a 5% discount on SWU singles. And the money that you save, you might be able to use for the healthcare here in America that you're forced to pay for. So,
oh man, I could have used some of that.
Yeah.
Or
very
just
relevant for this episode.
Or be like most Americans and just try to pretend that you're not sick and just don't go and be like, I'm sure it'll all get better someday. Just power through it. The American way. That's right. But you can buy your card and comic stuff the Canadian way, which is, probably superior in this case. So Invasion, cnc.ca. Go check it out. Thanks for sponsoring the show. We love you guys. So speaking of the show, on to the bulk of it, which is going to be based around largely the 2 starter decks for Shadows of the Galaxy that were showed off today as we record this on May 15th on stream. Fantasy Flight Games had a show match refereed, I guess you could say, by Xander, newly minted community manager. Funny enough, so I recorded a few Hello There episodes last weekend when I was up in Minnesota. I met up with some of those guys. I recorded one with Xander. And at that time, his title was Community Engagement Specialist. And because I had always just thought of him as the community manager, I thought it was maybe like somewhere like special title where it's like, well, everyone else uses community manager. We're going to make you a community engagement specialist. And so I had to make sure I introduced him as such on the Hello There episode. And then here it is days later before we release that episode. Now he's officially community manager. So thanks a lot, Xander. We'll get the subtitle on the video. We'll fix that. Don't worry. We'll get it.
We'll figure it out somehow. But
yeah, the artist formerly known as community engagement specialist. Yeah.
One of the things that we also had to figure out this week, again, because you and I were sick and Flake was traveling, was the cave poll. So every week we do a cave poll,
you're right.
But this week it was a little bit late getting up again because you and I, our brains are just mush at this point, and Flake was on a plane traveling to the other side of the world.
I'm sick of all these flakes on this Monday to Friday plane.
Yeah.
Flakes on a plane. That's really funny to me right now. It's probably because I've been taking a lot of NyQuil.
I mean, it's funny to me that every time Flake misses an episode, it's because he's doing something just phenomenal. And like every time that I miss an episode, it's because of something awful. So I want to reverse this trend. Not that I want anything awful to happen to Flake, but I would like to, he went to New Zealand. He went to Japan now. Yeah. He's just living his best life.
Wow.
Oh, but we're stuck in the cave. So I guess we should cover our cave poll of the week.
We should. So this was on me, and we didn't have as many votes this time around because I was late. I only gave people about 24 hours to vote in it. But the question was essentially, what's your desert island Star Wars video game? Because there's been so many, like hundreds at this point over the years, ranging all the way back to like the late 80s, I think was like the first Star Wars video games. There was even a Star Wars arcade game back in, I think, the early 80s even. An arcade machine. Yeah. So there's a lot to choose from. And so I put some of the greatest hits on the list, but I also left a spot for people to write in their choices. And the response was so varied that even with less votes than usual because of the late, posting of the cave poll, that I have to actually cover my face to show you the results. There you go. There wasn't enough room, and I didn't want to cover up you. So I'm just covering up me this time. Now, as you can see, Knights of the Old Republic won. And what did you vote for? First of all, as we look at this list,
you and I are probably one half of the votes for Star Wars Galaxies.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. There are 4 votes for Star Wars Galaxies. You and I are 2 of them. There 2 other people out there are truly Star Wars video gamers of class and culture, because that game, in case you're unfamiliar with it, and you probably are, it was one of the very first massively multiplayer online video games. It predated World of Warcraft, actually. Back in the early 2000s. It was an incredible game it had a very weak questing system, but your character got better by doing the thing you're trying to get better at. So you grew in a very organic way. If you wanted to get better at marksmanship, you'd just go shoot at things, right? If you wanted to get better at bioengineering, for instance, which was my specialty in that game, you would go around and sample the DNA of various creatures around the galaxy. Every item in the game was made by another player, so the economy was amazing. Fantastic MMO, and we got a lot of us into MMOs. Me for sure. How about you?
Yeah, I had played MMOs before that. I had dabbled with EverQuest, and I had played Ultima. Back when it was a buggy mess, but I'd played Ultima Online. But that one was the first one that made me truly fall in love with an MMORPG because it was everything that I wanted from a game. As you said, the questing was a little weak, but it kind of didn't matter because the game forced you to interact with players. If you did any sort of big battle, right? So if you did a big crate dragon hunt where you literally had to organize a raiding party, not just to fight the thing, but also to defend against other raiders coming to steal your crate dragon, you would just get the stuff from a crate dragon and then you'd have to take it to somebody to craft your cool items, right? There was no like, oh, I got this cool chest piece from the monster I killed. No, you got, plate hides and pearls and whatever.
Yeah.
And you could player build cities as well. Everything was just driven kind of by the player. Like you really did create your own story. There was like 30 different classes and you mixed and matched them because of, again, the way Doa was describing the progression system. So you could be like a bounty hunter, animal handler, for example. So you could do the Book of Boba Fett thing where you literally have a pet rancor, but you're also a bounty hunter. Like that was in that game 20 some odd years ago, long before the show. Speaking of bounties, and this was maybe my favorite mechanic in the game, if somebody really annoyed you,
that's right,
you could literally put a bounty on their head. Like you could go to a terminal, you'd have to use your own credits in game, but you could say like, hey, I'll give 10,000 credits to somebody who defeats this player,
if you go kill
just to annoy them.
Yeah.
And I also, the last thing that I always thought was really elegant about that game was that the PvP stuff was optional, but it wasn't like you turned it on or off. You flagged yourself by taking actions. So for example, Jedi were supposed to be rare. So if you lit up a lightsaber in the city, anything that was trying to hunt Jedi would become hostile to you, including the opposing faction. So if you wanted to train your Jedi, you again almost had to do this like secret training the way a Jedi would.
Yeah.
Similarly, if you are somebody who wants to wear Stormtrooper armor, which was actually really good in the game, you were always flagged for PvP because if you're wearing Stormtrooper armor, you're declaring yourself an Imperial. Just neat stuff like that was very, just elegant, like, oh, that makes total sense. I never questioned it. I miss that game so much. That was definitely my Desert Island game and a half when it comes to Star Wars stuff.
One last thing about that game, and then I promise we'll move on, because we could do a whole podcast about how much we love that game, actually. But when you died or just going through the game and engaging in combat for long enough, you would take permanent damage to your statistics, so to your health, to your stamina, all that kind of stuff. And that permanent damage could only be removed by other player characters that were either entertainers or doctors, and they would have different specializations. So like entertainers could restore your stamina, doctors could restore the permanent damage to your health total. And so there were actual like player run hospitals and cantinas filled with players performing and being doctors and stuff. Oh, and you could build your own towns too. The planets had these huge open spaces because you were meant to like build your own towns, as in you could like buy a building and put it out in the desert in Tatooine, and your other guildmates could put their buildings next to it. You could have your own shops, you could have your own cantinas, you could literally start your own towns that would attract people to come there and all that. And they did. It was great.
One of the classes was literally politician. So like if you wanted to just be a Queen Amidala or whatever, and they were the ones who allowed you to start the city because you had to be zoned for it, right? Just neat stuff like that. It was so well done. And again, it forced player interaction. I think a lot of MMOs today, my biggest gripe with them is they feel like single player games that I sometimes play with friends.
100%
and
agree.
Star Wars was, if you played Star Wars Galaxies, it was the worst single player game ever, but it didn't matter because all of the player interaction was 100 times better than anything I wanted from the story anyway. If I wanted the story, I'd go watch Star Wars. And I'm not saying there haven't been great story-based games. I love Knights of the Old Republic.
The winner of our cave poll, by the way, Knights of the Old Republic.
Winner. When SWTOR came out, the later MMO, I fell in love with the story for that game.
Fourth.
And that's like the other end of the spectrum. The story was great. The multiplayer stuff, not so much.
Yeah, so let's take a look at the results. Because you mentioned a couple of these games as I lift this back over my face. I'm coughing anyway. It's okay. Star Wars Galaxies was second. Knights of the Old Republic took first. I would say arguably the best Star Wars game ever made. I think a lot of people would agree with that. X-Wing took third, an old school classic, actually. And then The Old Republic, yeah, the second Star Wars MMO that was set in the Old Republic era, and was a very, very good game. I enjoyed that one quite a bit. Rogue Squadron, great game back on N64. It had a couple sequels, tied with the Old Republic. Jedi Outcast. You know, a lot of these are like older games. I'm surprised, because then you get things like Fallen Order, that kind of stuff. I did notice, so yeah, I didn't put Star Wars in front of every title because I, you know, assumed people knew that I was talking about Star Wars Fallen Order. But if you look, some people actually in the write-in sections wrote in Star Wars The Old Republic when the Old Republic was an option they could just choose. So all I can say is read the polls. Read the polls. Come on. But either way, a lot of votes for a lot of different games. Star Wars Behind the Magic was a CD-ROM thing. It's not really a game. That was more of a series of behind the scenes information and stuff. You know, props for knowing that exists, but not really a game. But I'm glad we had the other category. We got some interesting things in there. I got to be careful with letting people write anything they want in, though, now that I think about it.
Granted, this, again, had a very short window for folks to respond, but I'm kind of surprised we didn't see any, like, Force Unleashed.
Right.
Because that, I know that game is beloved by a lot of people, and, you know, some people wanted that character to be canon for a bit. Also, very surprised, not a lot of love apparently for the Empire Strikes Back on Atari.
No Super Star Wars
I played that
votes.
a lot in preschool, so.
Yeah, I see. The oldest one I put in there, side scrollers, was I put in Super Star Wars, because there was Super Star Wars, Super Empire Strikes Back on SNES. Those were notoriously hard games. No love for
the
those.
Atari one was hard as well, but flying around that speeder trying to shoot at the AT-ATs was fun.
The Atari one, wasn't that a port of the arcade game, the original arcade Star Wars game? Or am I wrong about that?
I think so. Parts of it, like, it wasn't 1-to-1, because there was no way you could do those kinds of ports back then.
Yeah, that's true. So anyway, thanks for stopping by our Star Wars video game nostalgia podcast. It's been a great episode. No, let's talk about the card game, Star Wars Unlimited. That was our Cave Bowl, by the way. We'll get the other one out in a more timely manner this week. But yeah, the starter decks were previewed on the Fantasy Flight stream, and man, we got a lot of new cards to go over. Again, in case you've forgotten, the two starter leaders for Shadows of the Galaxy are Moff Gideon on the villainy side. He's a command villainy leader, and then the Mandalorian on the heroism cunning side, I believe it is. Yeah, heroism cunning.
Command.
Not for the Mandalorian.
No, sorry.
Yeah.
Not for a Mandalorian. I was thinking of Boba. I'm already crisscrossing my armor wearing heroic leaders in this set. I'm gonna do that a bunch, I'm sure.
Those Mandalorians. Speaking of which, we're starting the previews. Do you want to just jump into it?
Yeah. All right. Because we start with Boba Fett. So since I've mentioned it, we might as well do it.
Boba
Fett got revealed.
He did.
I know that you're gonna get it up on the screen. I will just kind of talk us through it. The leader card itself is, as I said, heroism and command. It says when you play a unit that has one or more keywords, you may exhaust this leader. If you do, you give a friendly unit +1/+0 for this phase. Now, this is interesting because you play a unit with a keyword to buff another unit, but that unit can be anything, right? It doesn't have to have keywords. It's just the playing of a unit with keywords that activates the leader. Now, it's a 6-cost leader as far as deployment goes. So when you have 6 or more resources, you can deploy it. Has a 4/7 body. So if you've played Boba Fett, you're used to that. Just has the underworld tag. However, it does have text that says each other friendly unit that has one or more keywords gets +1/+0. So when it's the leader card, you play units with keywords to buff any unit, but then when he's deployed, it's only your units with keywords that get the bonus, but they all get it as a static effect.
And I would assume a lot of the units you put in your deck are going to have keywords to turn it on, so it should theoretically be all of your units.
Yeah, should theoretically be, but the reason that it might not be is because this is a common leader, and this is what I wanted to highlight. Again, we're going to lead right off with me talking about limited.
All right, let's do
I
it.
think that this has the potential to be a really strong, a really powerful leader in draft and or sealed, because the static buff is pretty easy to invest into. You want to likely play powerful units that have keywords anyway, and so if you're going to give them just a flat buff, that feels pretty good. You're going to be in command, that feels pretty good. I could see this very much becoming almost like the Tarkin of set 2, in that it's your command leader that just kind of gives you a bonus, and it doesn't have to be built around. Obviously you can build around it, but it's a good catch-all leader.
Sure.
I think that this is neat for limited.
Yeah, I think this is one too where it's like you forget a lot of times how strong a +1 to power is in this game. It's very significant when it comes to the math of this game in terms of hitting the breakpoints, trading favorably. So this is one of the leaders that I think we'll see definitely in draft, but a little bit maybe in constructed as well. The tricky part is that playing a unit to give something +1 attack does alter your typical play pattern a little bit, where you generally want to use what's on the board before you start playing cards unless you have to, but there are lots of situations, say you have a Sentinel down already, then you play something, use Boba Fett, give your Sentinel +1 attack, and it's that much more deadly, for that turn, because then people have to attack into it. So I think there's some interesting mid-rangey to slower deck styles that you could maybe do that work with Boba Fett in a constructed setting. But I think at the very least, he's a leader that's going to be worth some experimentation, because that +1 attack it's strong. I mean, that's proven to be a significant thing in this game. So I'm excited about the leader. Very cool art too. I'm not a huge fan of the Book of Boba Fett show, I'll be honest, but I do love the art on this card.
Yeah, there are parts of the show that I liked thematically, and things that I wish
agree
that they would have stuck to. I'll say this. I'm actually looking forward to building a Tusken Raider tribal deck with Boba Fett as the leader somehow, just to really pound that theme home. But
could do that.
We got another leader that was spoiled, and this is the one I might be the most excited for out of the new leaders. So I'll let you read it, and then I'll talk about all the reasons why I love this.
All right, so here he is, Lando Calrissian with impeccable taste is his tagline, which I love. It's young Lando from the Solo: A Star Wars Story movie. Action, exhaust him, play a card using Smuggle. It costs 2 less. Defeat a resource you own and control. So this is interesting, yeah, because, and I'm sure you'll have a lot to say about this, Charmer, but it lets you kind of get around the common cost of smuggled things, which is usually about 2 more than usual. Sometimes it's a lot more, but making your smuggle stuff cheaper is significant. You can maybe play some overvalued stuff a little bit earlier again, which is what a lot of the Heroism Cunning leaders have done. Set 1 Han, doing that too. You do defeat a resource, but again, that's kind of a tax that you sort of get used to. So pair this with command, resupply. Maybe you can sort of stay ahead of this. But it's an interesting leader to think about, and he does flip on 4. Let's look at that leader side, and go ahead. Give me your thoughts on this.
Well, the leader side is essentially like the other side, right? It is a 4-cost 2/5 underworld unit, but it just says action, play a card using Smuggle. It costs 2 less, defeat a resource you own, use this ability once each round, but you don't have to exhaust him. So you just do the action, and then he can still attack. And that's the big reason why this card excites me, because I think that this is going to be potentially an alternative to Sabine if you want to play some sort of either aggressive or tempo-oriented style of deck. Specifically, I think a bit more on the tempo side.
For sure.
I like kind of the core or the shell of the double cunning Boba Fett that's been popping up recently. And I kind of wanted to try to figure out how to do that in Heroism, specifically because being able to play 3 copies of Spark of the Rebellion, 3 copies of Bodhi, 3 copies of Cantina Bouncer, just like really annoying stuff, was appealing, but you lack some of the meat because you don't have a Bosk and you don't have some of those other cards.
Yeah.
Lando here is going to be a leader that is better than Jin, and I think better suited than Han for that style of deck. And if you're trying to build it kind of tempo or aggressive and low to the ground, the defeat a resource thing isn't that big of a deal because you're topping out at a higher or at a lower thing. So if you go higher and then you lose a resource, you're not crippling yourself as much. So
right.
I'm looking forward to this. This is where I think I might try to build some sort of aggressive deck that's going to be a bit similar to the way that you play Sabine, because I'm very rebel heavy. and I noticed that you're a bit more action heavy. I think that Lando is going to be a lot of fun to play, a bit more action heavy, but still aggressive, still tempo oriented. He just lets you do a lot.
Well, I'm just thinking about like if you play tech, in this deck, which was revealed a little while ago, he gives all of your resources smuggle at a cost of +2. So this basically lets you have tech out and then play any card in your resources for just its normal cost, basically. So there's some pretty strong combos that come into it. And obviously, if you're playing tech, you're going to be playing in a more mid-rangey tempo kind of way. But I think there's really a lot of fun things you could potentially do with this deck. So again, like so far, a lot of the leaders I've really been impressed with the way they make me think about deck building. So that'll be fun because there's a lot of leaders in each set. So it's interesting to me that like the consistency of making leaders where I'm like, oh, I kind of want to try that and think about it keeps happening. I like that. Well, let's move on to our non-leader card here. It is Hyloban Enforcer. Do you want to talk about this? I suppose we have to trade back and forth. Go ahead.
Sure. Hyloban Enforcer is a 1-cost villainy vigilance ground unit as a 1/4 stat line, underworld keyword, but it has underworld tag, has the grit keyword as well as bounty, draw a card. So it's just part of that cycle that we've kind of already seen of overstated 1-drops that have bounty with that intended to be the drawback. I say intended because this card is perfect for a Krennic or an Inquisitor deck. It's essentially a scout bike, but 1 cheaper.
Yeah.
Allowing you to potentially play 2 on turn 1 or do some other shenanigans with it. And I feel like if you're playing Inquisitor specifically, where you're likely going to be either a bit more aggressive or at, worst, maybe mid-rangey, but kind of combo-oriented mid-rangey. I don't think that the draw a card drawback is going to be that big of a deal. So jamming this would feel fine, in my opinion.
Yeah, even playing this with Bosk, right? I mean, Bosk is something where it's do 1 damage to a character with a bounty, give it +1 power, right? So it would essentially give this +2 power, right? It would end up being a 3/3 when you swing with it then. So there's some funky stuff you can do with that. Units that come with bounties already on them certainly seem to be fitting into various aggressive archetypes. So yeah, just more fuel to the aggression fire, I feel like. So cool to see. I'm trying to mute whenever I'm coughing.
You're fine.
Powering through this. All right. Let's go. We got 37 cards to get through, I think. So, and I love spoiler season, right? I want to say for a sec, we do this show, we try to have a topic every week and all that. Not when it's spoiler season. No, then we just get to talk about new cards every week.
To talk about.
Yeah, this is great. So let's move on to Dr. Pershing. There he is, from the Mandalorian TV show, the alternative to Grogu, as he was kind of described by, I believe it was Tyler on the stream today. 2 for 0/5, as Grogu is as well. Grogu obviously cutting heroism, Dr. Pershing vigilance, villainy, Imperial, action, exhaust him, deal 1 damage to a friendly unit, draw a card. Notably, he can deal 1 damage to himself. To draw a card, you don't have to have any other units out there. So he's just some really good card generation, honestly. If you just play him and do this like turn to turn, I like to talk about cards that essentially are 5 extra life on your base because they're cards that just need to be attacked into. They need to have something done to them because you just can't let them sit out there, right? And I think this card qualifies as that because say you play this guy in like Palpatine or something. You are going to be generating so much card draw that it's going to be difficult for your opponent to keep up. So if they know that, they're going to have to deal with this. So I like this card because it puts that sort of like phantom pressure, or should I say a phantom menace on your opponent's mindset, in that there's something out there and it's not hurting them actively, but they know it's bad for them if they allow it to remain. So Dr. Pershing fits into that. I think he's a really cool card.
Much like the last card, I saw this and I thought Krennic right out of the gate because it's already in the same aspect combo, powers up your units very, very easily, continues to work well with grit units, etc. I also really like the idea of either finding ways to give this vigilance card Sentinel in a pinch, right? So if you're playing double vigilance, you could play like Protector on it, because then suddenly it's got a really big back end. The other big thing that I keep thinking about is Entrench, where you might be able to like really make your opponent have to pick their poison. Now, obviously, I expect, answers to upgrades to be floating around in the next set, but it's one of those things where you throw an Entrench on this, and he's a 3/8, so he can help you kind of clear out the ground lane. And then if there's nothing there, if they say, hey, I'm not going to play to there, I'm going to focus on space because I don't want to deal with your entrenched doctor, well, then he's like, all right, well, I'll just ping myself and draw a card every turn, right? It's a pick your poison. So a lot of neat things I think we'll see attempted with our villainous version of Grogu.
With the good doctor, right? The good bad doctor. Yeah. But he's reformed now, right? Kind of. I'll have to go rewatch season 3. I can't remember exactly. Let's move on to the client.
Yeah, let's move on to Kerner, aka the client.
Werner Herzog. Yeah.
The client is a 3-cost villainy vigilance unit, has a 2/5 stat line, is also an Imperial and an official, so helps to turn on your Emperor's Royal Guards if you're paying attention. Is shielded, so you're, again, 3 for a 2/5 shielded, already pretty solid, but wait, there's more. As an action, you can exhaust him and choose a unit. For this phase, it gains bounty, heal 5 damage from a base.
Sabine hates this one simple trick.
This card is bananas to me. And it's mind-blowing that this is an uncommon, whereas the good bad doctor was the rare.
I know.
Because
I was thinking the same thing, actually. I'm glad you brought that up.
This card is pretty difficult to kill. Like, there are cards like Takedown. We know calculated lethality is coming, etc. But for the most part, your aggressive decks will likely struggle to get rid of this. The bounty is incredibly relevant. Now, granted, you're going to have to spend an action up front to exhaust him to give something a bounty and then kill it. But a lot of times the aggressive decks are taking more actions than you anyway, so it's not that big of a deal. But also for decks that care about the bounty keyword, this is something where you don't have to just run bounties in your deck. You can have a unit that just hands out bounties. So if you're playing like that Bosk deck, for example, and you're really looking for a good payoff, he can just give something bounty, heal 5, and then when Bosk is flipped and you collect that bounty, you heal 10 from your base, and it's repeatable. Like, what?
Like,
that's insane.
The way I see it when I look at this card is that I'm on the side of the Cunning Sabines that just run a couple Waylay main deck. I'm like, you just gotta run Waylay now, like, because if you're playing a low to the ground aggressive deck like I like to play, I mean you like to play Sabine a little bit differently, but you're still in that camp, for the most part. Like, you can't deal with this on board. It takes too many resources. You'd lose too much of the momentum that you need to win a game with those low to the ground aggressive decks. This needs to be waylaid. It needs to be dealt with a single card. Otherwise, you're just going to lose a game. So, I see this and I'm like, all right, I'm just going to run waylay main board and hope I've got it around for this guy. Because otherwise, you're just not going to have the units on board to deal with this efficiently and still do damage to base. It's a terrifying card.
Yeah, so there are some interesting things that you can do to buy yourself time. I don't disagree with you necessarily on the waylay thought process. I'm simply saying that one of the things that does balance this a little bit is the fact that you have to take the action and exhaust him. So if the Sabine player is running like Leia or anything else that exhausts units, you might have a window where you can at least exhaust him so that they can't add the bounty. You're probably still going to face some removal.
Asteroid Sanctuary works on this, I suppose.
Different version of an uphill battle, but at least there's something that you can do outside of the waylay. But I have a feeling that waylay and or the new heroism cunning version of waylay will both be seeing quite a bit of play.
Yeah, for sure. Because I mean, even if you're exhausting him every turn, that's like resources that you have to spend exhausting him every turn instead of resources playing things that are going to kill your opponent. So he's still doing his job, even if he's exhausted, if he's drawing resources and cards out of your opponent's hand. So yeah, again, like I look at this and I'm like, this looks like a rare quality card to me. But at the end of the day, it's just going to be strong in decks. It's a very, very powerful card. So But if I'm playing Vigilance Villainy, I'm going to love this card. That's for sure. And, I've been looking for other decks outside of Sabine. I've been known to play a little bit of Control here and there. I was playing some Casino Han. I was playing some Palpatine earlier in the set. So, maybe the Sabine thing has kind of run its course. It's time to move over and, play some Vigilance Villainy. I don't know. We'll see. Let's move on to the next card, though. It is a Clan Ren Rescuer, 2-cost Vigilance Heroism, 1/2 Mandalorian Trooper. When played, give an experience token to a unit. Interesting card. It's low stats for 2 resource cost, obviously, but being able to just give an experience token to a unit and get a 1/2 body on the board, that sounds pretty good. This sounds like your basic, I'm going to put this in my Mandalorian deck, and eventually it's going to get, replaced by a better card in a future set. But for now, this is going to be in there, and it's going to be pretty good.
I actually really like this, simply because it doesn't say give an experience token to another unit.
Yeah, so it's broad.
At a minimum, it's a vanilla 2/3, but it's going to have the Mandalorian tag. It's going to have the Trooper tag. So those are both relevant for whatever deck you're probably playing. The other nice thing is if you're playing the Mandalorians, we know that there's a lot of upgrade synergy there, and the experience tokens are upgrades. So this gives you, I think, a nice early unit that, like, you can play if you just desperately need board presence, but still gives you value if you draw at late game as well. And so I think that kind of flexibility is going to make this at least make the cut for some sort of like Mandalorian upgrade deck in set 2. And I think that it'll also see a hefty amount of play in limited because of its flexibility as well.
This just reinforces my thoughts that the good way to, one of the strong early ways to build Bo-Katan is going to be with Vigilance, because this fits right into that game plan where it's like it can come a little bit later in the game and buff something. That's fine too. Like you said, you can play it on turn 1 and get a 2/3 at least. It's not great, but there it is. But yeah, I think Bo-Katan with Vigilance is going to be the way to go early on, at least. Yeah, let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on to Kuil. I have spoken.
He has spoken.
No, that's literally the sub text, right? Like I love that they did that. So
he says it enough.
Yeah, I mean that's his thing. 2-cost Heroism Vigilance ground unit, has the Fringe tag, a 2/3 body, has Restore 1, and if that wasn't enough, on attack, discard a card from your deck. If it shares an aspect with your base, return it to your hand. This is kind of silly to me because it's an Arclight for ground units, right? It's a 2/3 with Restore 1, so that's already pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But also, if you are somebody like me who keeps trying to make Heroism double Vigilance work, it's one of the first control decks I tried building. This just gives you another excuse to do so, because this basically then says on attack, draw a card for the vast majority of your deck.
This guy fits right into Chirrut. Like, he is like tailor-made for a double blue Chirrut deck, I think. Yeah. Just a really good card. I'm looking through some of the other spoilers too, because I'm wondering now if let's see. So I'm looking at, synergy with other Discord or discard related things, right? Like Echo has, when played, you may discard a card from your hand, give 2 experience tokens to a unit, and play with the same name as a discarded card. Like, I don't know. No, I guess that doesn't really interact, but I wonder if there's something where we can start messing with the discard pile a little bit in the future. Because if I'd like to see that. That's what this card makes me think about is, do I get to play a deck at some point where I'm like moving things around in my discard pile, and manipulating that? That sounds fun. So
we do have that ability on the Command Legendary, but obviously that's double green. So
yeah,
if we ever get it, I suspect it's going to be in Command, and that might make the consistency here a little weird. But
well, I mean, people have shown that you can definitely play those double aspect legendaries in, decks that you have to pay 6 for. I mean, that's kind of the majority of the way they're played right now. So there might be a point where Command gets to that status. Yeah. Either way, neat card. Like you said, I think double Vigilance decks it's going to really excel in. Otherwise, it's a 2 for 2/3 with Restore. You can't choose to not discard a card. It doesn't say you may, it just says discard a card. So that is something to think about when you're thinking about putting that in this deck, is that if you aren't running double vigilance, are you okay with discarding certain cards? If you're running just heroism stuff, which usually you do run some just heroism stuff, it's something to think about. But either way, intriguing card for sure. All right. Village Protectors, 3 for a 2/2. Sentinel Shielded, Heroism, Vigilance, Fringe. This is going to be a really, really irritating card, I think, for aggro to deal with. I mean, it does cost 3, but still, I mean, you get that 2/2 Shielded with Sentinel. It's, everyone already doesn't like dealing with Crafty Smuggler. What if Crafty Smuggler had Sentinel? What about that then,
I hate this as somebody who plays a lot of aggro.
Yeah.
But I chuckled when I saw this because in my head I was like, they should just change the name to Gets, Make, and Opening.
Yeah, that is also a good opportunity for that. Otherwise, Calculated Lethality would take it down.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So I like that we're seeing this stuff, but we already know there are answers as well, just changes to the way decks are built. I don't have a whole lot else to say about this one.
That's going to be my favorite thing, is like brewing and testing after the new set, because there are so many, I think, neat things to try.
Yeah.
And honestly, even some generic things like the next card. So HWK 290 Freighter is a space unit in just vigilance. It costs 3. It is a vehicle and a transport, and it's simply a 2/5. That's it. Not a lot to write home about, but that's actually, in my opinion, still kind of interesting, because that's a big stat line for space.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in vigilance, you probably have a way to give this Sentinel, and even if you don't, this could potentially get you like a value trade or two. I really like it in limited just for the stats alone, but I'm wondering if we're going to see some experimentation with this, even in constructed. If the upgrade thing becomes more prevalent and there are more ways than just the protector card to give something Sentinel, I could see this absolutely finding a home.
Yeah, it's fun to see more sort of generic vanilla cards coming in with decent stat lines and different aspects. For one, it's good for limited, right? Like you said, you're just going to feel pretty decent about this. For two, yeah, it's good sort of filler in a deck that targets, cards with a lot of upgrades and things. So 5 health and space, that on its own, or that buffed a little bit, gets to be a little bit scary. So it's kind of exciting. Because what Protector is +1/+1, so it'd be a 3/6.
Yep. It takes it out of takedown range.
Yeah. Very cool. All right, moving on to Survivor's Gauntlet, a 5 for a 4/6 Mandalorian vehicle transport. When played / on attack, you may attach an upgrade on a unit to another eligible unit controlled by the same player. Now, that is exciting, because that lets you, say you have an upgrade that's like, so imagine this just for, the sake of example. Imagine this with like Luke's lightsaber, right? A 3/1 or something. You attack with that lightsaber wielding unit, then you attack with this, move the lightsaber to a different ground unit that can then attack with it. So I think this is a fun way to potentially bounce around upgrades and get value from multiple units using the same upgrade.
Yeah, this card is silly, and I am immediately intrigued and want to build a deck around this, because First of all, it's just vigilance, so you can play both sides of the aisle. But as you were pointing out, right, you said Luke's lightsaber. For me, the appealing one is the Jedi lightsaber, where you get the -2/-2 on attack.
It was just the first example I thought of.
Yeah, or the Fallen lightsaber on the other side, where you can like ping the ground units, right? The other thing that really jumps out to me is a big stat line. 4/6 for 5 in space is actually pretty good, but it also says that it's between units controlled by the same player.
Right.
So you could also have a situation where early you play a bounty on, a unit, because it might be the only unit they have, and then if they play something spicier, you're going to kill, you could swing with this, move the bounty over, and collect the bounty while also getting rid of like the more premier unit. Similarly, you could entrench something early, and then when they play something else, you could attack with this and move the entrench to the more annoying unit and really lock things down in that regard. So both the like positive and the negative upgrades, and finagling them, for lack of a more official term, Just really, really has me excited. I think this is a very neat card in terms of design, and I don't know if it'll end up being competitive, just because you're gonna have to have some sort of like criminal
It's expensive.
bounties and or some level of upgrades that you're wanting to abuse, and then you have to play this and do the thing, right? So there's a lot of setup, but I feel like it will be very satisfying to do. So I will at least attempt this for a casual deck,
Totally,
one way or another.
I mean, this will go right in my Bo-Katan deck for sure. Because I mean, think about it too. Like upgrades or experience and shield tokens are upgrades. So take a shield off an annoying unit that you want to kill, take an XP off an annoying unit that you want to have just enough to kill, or late game, you play this on 5. Then on turn 6, you play a cheap shielded unit that wouldn't be useful otherwise, but then you attack and you move that shield to either this or to, another unit that's useful, right? I mean, think about it. You play this on 5, then on 6 you play the shielded unit, then you attack with this into something, and then on attack you move the shield from that unit onto this, so then you can attack as shielded because that shield would move over before the damage is done. So there's a lot of really neat tricks you can do with this, and I think this unit could actually be really scary. So I'm curious.
Luke could also get a lot of benefit from this because
Totally,
you could be giving out those shield tokens on units that may or may not be like really worth it to invest the shields on, but just because you're stacking them up to move them around later.
Right. Yeah, I mean, you could do a lot with it, but either way, an intriguing card to talk about, but we must move on.
We have to move on.
It's you.
To me, Public Enemy.
No, I didn't mean.
No,
I think
no,
it's
this
you.
is-
I think
Yeah,
it's your turn to talk about the card.
It is
literally
my
you
turn to
and that
talk about the card, and it's called Public Enemy. So this is a 0-cost vigilance upgrade, and it is titled Public Enemy. Attached unit gains bounty, give a shield token to a unit, and of course, naturally, it provides +0/+0 is a bounty and a condition. So,
Hey,
another cheap bounty that you can dole out, but also one that you could move around with that card we were just talking
I
about.
was gonna say, yeah, fits in pretty nicely with the one we just saw. Yeah, cool. I mean, I don't have a lot to add to that. Another just great bounty card. It's cool to see different bounties coming out in different aspects. You're gonna have a lot of options, it looks like, in terms of what bounties to put in your deck to put on your opponent's units. So yeah, should be pretty fun. All right, Foundling. A 1-cost upgrade. Attached unit gains the Mandalorian trait, +1/+1. So we talked about this. I think I talked about this in a previous week with all the buffing and things like that. I think Bo-Katan likes things to be Mandalorians. I was like, I wish there was a way we could make things Mandalorians. And it makes total sense that this exists because the whole point of the whole Foundling thing in The Mandalorian is that he was not born on Mandalore, but he became a Mandalorian because he was a foundling. Grogu became a Mandalorian because Grogu is a foundling. So why can't any unit become a Mandalorian? And the answer is it can with this upgrade. Very cool.
And just like in the show, where if you mess up and you take your helmet off, you could lose your status. That ship that we were talking about 2 cards ago can move this around.
Oh. So
you could be like, sorry, you're a Mandalorian. Actually, sorry, I was just kidding. Now you're not.
This isn't the way after all.
Yep, you went and did your journey, so now you're back to being a Mandalorian.
You took a bath on that one planet, so now you're Mandalorian again on Mandalore. There you go. But it's cool. I think this is the first card that we've seen bestow a trait to a card, which is neat. I mean, I hope we get a lot more of this kind of thing, honestly, when it makes thematic sense, because if you want to build a certain trait, like, what if there was one that makes somebody a sand person, right? Because, like, in Book of Boba Fett, he kind of essentially became part of the tribe. So why not?
I was thinking about something like enlistment, where you become an Imperial, like you sign up.
Yeah. Or rebellious, where you become a rebel, or something like that. Right. Yeah. No,
I think
we should totally have more of these. Yeah, the gaffy stick. That's what you need for the Tusken Raider thing. That sounds good. Yeah, because that's like they give him one, and that's like the moment where he's part of their crew. And then they all die, but not just the men, the women and the children. units as well.
Once you have been found, right? Once you've been found, you're going to need some new duds, right? So once you've become a Mandalorian, you need Mandalorian armor. So Mandalorian armor is a 2-cost vigilance upgrade that you attach to a non-vehicle unit. When played, if attached unit is Mandalorian, give a shield token to it, and then it also passively grants +1/+3. So healthy amount of stats if you meet the qualification. Like 2 for a shield and +1/+3 feels really strong. I think that's why this is a rare card, mostly because in limited this would be a nightmare if there were too many of these floating around. But also just love that it's, again, right in theme with the, not only is this an upgrade, but it's giving yet another upgrade as well. So all of those upgrade synergies, you know, baked onto one card is very, very nice.
It is. I'm getting really excited to play these Mandalorian decks because I love the idea of playing a bunch of upgrades, moving upgrades around. The order of operations in which you move things around each turn is going to be very impactful. So it's going to be kind of skill testing. I'm really excited about this kind of stuff. And I think another thing to think about is the Voltron potential of having a leader with a whole bunch of upgrades on it, right? Something where it's a little bit tougher to remove all that. Obviously, you know, we have things like Power Failure, which Power Failure is going to be an extremely important card for this set. In case you forgot, that is a aggression card, costs 2, remove any number of upgrades from a unit. So that'll be a strong sideboard card. I've already been running a little bit, and it's performed wonderfully against like Lieutenant Childress and stuff like that. Going to be even more useful next set. But that aside, I like the idea of moving around a bunch of upgrades and bouncing around like that. Should be very fun. All right. Vambrace Grapple Shot, which is not just the name of an obscure Harry Potter character. It's also the name of this upgrade. I think that my next Dungeons & Dragons character is going to be named Vambrace Grapple Shot. I think that's it sounds like a halfling or something, you know?
I thought you were going to say it's not just the name of a punk rock band.
That's true.
To me, it also kind of sounds like a punk band.
That was my band in high school. We are Vambrace Grapple Shot. That's right. With our new album entitled Item Armor Weapon. Sounds like an album title. Anyway, this is an upgrade in Vigilance. Cost 2 for +2/+2. Attached to a non-vehicle, of course. Attached unit gains on attack, exhausts the defender. And I love it. I think thematically it's great. This is going to be one of those things where if you have it on your unit, your opponent's going to need to be very choosy about who they attack with first on their turn. Or if you have the initiative, you can just potentially run one of your guys into whoever you don't want to be attacked by, right? So yeah, I think it's got a lot of cool potential with it.
When I saw this card, I immediately thought of the client, because as I was saying before, sometimes you might need to exhaust him to prevent his nasty bounty giving ability. And with him having that 2/5 body and shielded, it's going to be really hard to attack him down. But a card like this allows you to, you know, with initiative, you can exhaust him before he activates. And with the +2/+2, you'll survive, you know, at least the first round of attacks, so that you can maybe do it again next turn and try to finish him off. So I saw this as a, you know, over the course of multiple turns, potential answer for that really annoying client that I already hate.
Yeah, I mean, you play this on the Mandalorian leader too, and so you play it, exhaust a unit, then you attack the Mandalorian into something else, exhaust that unit while you attack into it. So I think it kind of fulfills the fantasy too of you're just basically like taking on multiple people at once, right? That guy's tied up. You're going to take out that guy. Like I think if you put this on the Mandalorian himself, you can start to kind of play out that sort of like one-man army fantasy that Mandalorians kind of have that reputation for in Star Wars. So thematically very, very cool as well. Props. All right.
Hey, speaking of thematically,
yeah,
we finally know what card that Tusken went to, and this card's actually really good in my opinion.
Yeah.
This is Fell the Dragon. This is a 4-cost vigilance event. It is a tactic as far as the tags, and it says defeat a non-leader unit with 5 or more power. And this is very relevant because a lot of times in set 1, you were paying either the same or more to usually kill units that are on the board at the time of playing said removal on curve. I'm not saying that there's never been, you know, a Palpatine that was vanquished or whatever. Like, we know
Sure.
it can happen, but for the most part, when you're playing on curve, a lot of times if you're playing takedown, for example, you're either removing a unit that costs 4 or less, right? Vanquish was a lot of times played on curve at 5, and you were either killing something that was already on the board or something they just played maybe like, you know, 1 turn later. This has a lot more likelihood to give you that, you know, resource tempo value where you're paying less to kill something more expensive, because this is almost always going to be killing something that, you know, costs 5 or more, for example.
It's such a great mid-range option if you want to play those tempo decks where it's like, I don't want to go super fast. Excuse me. I don't want to go super slow into control stuff, but I want to be able to deal with the late game if my opponent gets there. This is a great card for that. You could call it reverse takedown, I suppose. But it's going to be very useful, I think. I think it's going to be certainly in a lot of sideboards, maybe even a lot of main decks, depending. 5 or more power, you know, that's not outside the realm of possibility for a lot of decks, you know, in the main board. So yeah, I think it's a good option to have. Just more blue single target removal. That's kind of blue's bread and butter. And, you know, again, I feel like you can probably produce some very powerful mid-rangey blue decks once the set comes out. It's a little bit scary. There's a lot of removal flying around, but yeah.
In terms of deck building, I think this card competes the most with Vanquish, because takedown, you're not going to take out your takedowns for this, because obviously takedown can still target leaders. Like, that's the reason that card is so good.
Right.
So this one targeting non-leaders is competing with Vanquish, and so then it just becomes, you know, if I find that I'm only ever killing big things with Vanquish, then why would I not run Fell the Dragon, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I suppose. That is true. Either way, another good card. We had so many good reveals today, including, actually, I don't know if this is good or not. I haven't really looked at it yet. It's a Outland TIE Vanguard. I'm tired and I've been sick all week. Give me a break.
No, you're fine.
Command.
This card is great on the art side at a minimum.
It is great on the art side. I do love that. I'm a big fan of green and black put together as a color combination anyway. That's you know, that's why I jumped right into Palpatine, I suppose. But and Moff Gideon looks quite appealing. Outland TIE Vanguard, though, costs 2. Its command villainy, 2/1 stat line, a little bit expensive for the stats, but when played, you may give an experience token to another unit that costs 3 or less. So it's a little bit of an alternative to the card we saw earlier, with kind of some more restrictions, I would say, thrown in. It's got the common TIE Fighter stat line, but all right, I'm not a huge fan of this card. I gotta say, it's not. You'd never play it on turn 1. You'd not feel good playing it on turn 2. All right, never mind. Never mind the thing I said leading up to this card. Maybe it's okay and limited, but I'm not a huge fan otherwise.
So what I was getting ready to say is that it's less flexible, obviously, than the Mandalorian card, because this has that another unit, whereas the Mandalorian is not that.
Right.
This does have the benefit of being in space, so that part is potentially more relevant, but ultimately where this card shines is in your collection binder as a hyperfoil, because I think that this card art is going to look gorgeous in hyperfoil, and that's probably where you're going to see it the most, is in your binder.
Yeah, it's too bad, right? I mean, because you can't. I'm sure they wanted to keep it at the standard TIE Fighter stat line at a 2/1, but just being 2 cost, it's just a little bit too rough, I think, to fit smoothly into a lot of turns. The +1 isn't good enough. And, you know, sure, maybe there's like a little bit of a power cost because it's in space and there's quote unquote less space stuff. But overall, there's not going to be like less space stuff. The more expansions come out, the more you can just go heavy space if you want to, right? So I think that's going to reduce the value of this card even more.
The only thing that jumps out to me, we do know that there's a number of cards that allow you to bounce units back to your hand, and this is something that does fill my qualifications of being a cheap to play thing that gives you a decent when played. So maybe maybe there is in the future or something, some deck where like that's your game plan, is that you're actually planning on just playing this like 2 or 3 times through the course of a game by bouncing it and replaying it, right? Like if this was on heroism side, for example, I'd feel better about playing this with like Bright Hope, right? Because you could, play a ground unit. You could maybe play this on 2, Bright Hope on 3, bounce this back. You draw the card, you get to replay it, yada yada yada.
Right.
Who knows? But on the surface, it does not look super appealing.
Yeah. Well, let's move on. Let's see if this card is appealing. What do you think?
The art is great. The card is Remnant Reserves. This is a 4-cost event. It is Villainy and Command. You search the top 5 cards of your deck for up to 3 units, reveal them, and draw them. So it's pay 4 to draw 3 in all likelihood, because you're probably, if you're playing this, you're going to be jam-packed full of units. This is, I think, great for what we've seen out of Gideon so far. He wants to be a low to the ground, kind of swarmy deck. This would be an easy way to refill your hand and then just play a bunch of cheap things if needed. And again, art's outstanding. I dig it. So
yeah,
I outside of Gideon, I don't know if this sees a lot of play, but I could see an argument for in Gideon.
Yeah, maybe Tarkin if you want to try to play that style, but Gideon just seems like he's going to be doing that a little bit better. But yeah, I mean, it's seems like it'll fit well in there. If you're playing that kind of low to the ground, this is sort of a hand refill, I guess, in a lot of cases. But since you don't get to play anything right away, it's maybe a little bit too slow for a lot of aggressive decks. So this I'm not super sure this is going to see a lot of use out of just, the starters if it's in there, or just maybe a draft as well. All right.
This next card is also awkward.
Yeah. All right. Freetown Backup. Now that's the name of my punk band in high school. Freetown Backup. That sounds like a band name, doesn't it? 2 costs.
That sounds like a cover band.
Yeah. Freetown Backup. What band would they be covering? Lazy Town?
Freebird.
Freebird.
Well, that's the song they'd be singing. So
wasn't there a band called O-Town back in like the 90s or something?
Yeah. It was a band
Early
that was
2000s?
put together on a reality TV show.
Oh yeah, that's right. Wasn't it? It was like a boy band reality TV show. Yeah.
Yeah.
O-Town Backup. All right. So that's the lore behind this card anyway. Stay tuned for more Star Wars Unlimited card lore from the minds of Charmer and Doa.
Oh God, we should not be allowed to do this by ourselves ever again.
We are medicated with the strongest over-the-counter stuff to handle colds and gastric issues, and we're reviewing cards. That's just how it goes. Cost 2, it's a command heroism card. 1/4 stat line, it's fringe. Just like people's enjoyment of the show. On attack, give another friendly unit +2/+2 for this phase. Smuggle for a 4, and then command heroism, right? So, yeah, if you smuggle this out late game, they're like, okay, and then next turn maybe you get to use it after you attack with your 1/4. And early game, I mean, it doesn't line up very well with the first couple turns of an aggressive deck, It
doesn't line up with anything.
Yeah, because it costs 2, so you can't play it along with something. You can't use it to augment like ambush, right? Because it doesn't line up with that. I'm trying to think. Okay, so here's how you could use it. No, I got it. I figured it out.
Okay,
you play this.
You got something.
I got it. You play this in Command Han. You play this turn 1. You play the Falcon turn 2. Then you attack with this and give the Falcon +2/+2, and you swing for 5. There you go. We found a way to make it work, but that might be the only way to actually get a benefit out of it in the very second turn. In theory, that's a 6 damage turn 2, which is not that bad now that I think about it. It is annoying for them to get rid of. So I think the strength of this card would come from the fact that 4 health makes it a little bit more irritating to get rid of, and you don't really want to leave it out for too long. Otherwise, it will be annoying when it's giving things +2/+2. But outside of the Millennium Falcon scenario, I don't see a lot of times where I would want to be playing this. What do you think?
This is why I'm so baffled about this card, and I'm personally convinced that there's either something in this set or in a future set that makes this card more relevant, because it's an uncommon for one. So
Yeah.
I think there might be something in this set. I can't imagine that this was like too strong and limited to have been a common. It's a double aspect, 2 cost 1/4 with no immediate impact.
Yeah.
And it requires something else. So as you said, like Falcon enters ready, nothing else does. So if you're playing this on turn 1, you're not getting the benefit for this until, in all likelihood, turn 4. Maybe you could argue like you play something else, and if it's a sentinel and then they don't kill it right away, then like you attack and you've buffed your sentinel or whatever.
Yeah,
but
there's
like
that, I guess.
yeah, right. Like but here's where it gets even weirder to me. So it's not a great opening play. It also doesn't satisfy like any relevant tribals. It's only fringe, right? It's not a rebel.
It's not even a trooper or something. Yeah.
It's not underworld. It's not a bounty hunter. It's only fringe that we've had very little interaction with. So it's not helping you there. The smuggle cost at 6 also feels like quite the barrier, because I'm going to have to pay 6 for a 1/4, no immediate impact, and then wait a turn, and then I have to like lead off with attacking with this before I get the benefit. That just seems way overcosted, even with smuggle.
Well, you pay 4. I mean, you'd pay 4. You wouldn't pay 6.
Or 4. Yeah. Sorry. Paying 4. I was thinking resource turn 6 is likely when that is occurring.
That's fair.
Because the reality is like you're never gonna pay for this like on 4, because you're gonna be playing stuff likely on curve, right? So sorry, my brain was going faster in my mouth. You're not likely paying for the smuggle until realistically like resource turn 6 or 7 or 8, if you're ever paying for it. So that late in the game, you're either dropping bombs or you're still overpaying for a 1/4, no value. Like,
yeah,
I just feel like there's something else that makes this card far more relevant, because right now it feels really awkward that it's got no relevant tags. It feels understated. It's very conditional, and it's an uncommon to boot. So I must be missing something. That's the only thing I can come up with, and we just probably haven't seen it yet.
It's like, I wonder if this was originally like an on play, give another friendly unit +2/+2 for the phase, and it's like, oh, that's too strong, we have to change it. Now we're making it on attack. Oh, it's not that good. It's good enough, you know. I don't know. It is a bit perplexing. Like I said, I mean, hey,
like if
you don't have the Falcon, you just
rebel, then I would feel way better about it, right? But I don't know.
Well, let's move on.
You know what card doesn't need relevant tags, although Underworld's arguably better than Fringe.
Sure.
Modded Cohort doesn't need relevant tags, because it's just good out of the box, in my opinion. So this is a 4 cost ground unit. It is command and heroism, has a 2/4 stat line, but it has 2 keywords, and those 2 keywords are ambush and raid 2. And this is a common, unlike our previous card that was an uncommon. So this is essentially the skiff, but without the need of having to have another command unit out, right? It's an ambush 4/4.
Heroism locked to a certain extent.
Yeah. Heroism locked to a certain extent. So there is that as well. But, and yes, obviously that's raid 2, so it's only when attacking. But I think that this is very, very good, especially in the common slot. And it will be something that will likely get picked pretty high in packs, because command doesn't usually have direct or traditional removal. They're using cards like Strike True or ambush cards, and this is outstanding in that regard.
I agree with everything you just said. I've been playing a lot of what is it, why am I blanking on the name? It's because I'm sick, but something operative, rebel operative, the 2/4 that has Saboteur and raid 2.
Rogue operative,
that's what it is. I've been playing that a lot in Sabine, and it's been great. So getting to essentially like do that attack with this immediately sounds awesome. So I like this card a lot. It's some people are going to be like, oh, it's those mod characters from Book of Boba Fett. Oh, weren't those so so dorky and un-Star Wars. I hear people say that a lot, and I have to refute that actually. I think the mods in Book of Boba Fett are one of the most Star Wars things in that show. And here's why. Because if you go back to the origins of Star Wars and go back to what George Lucas likes and a lot of things, he likes car culture, right? He likes modified, souped up cars. Think about American Graffiti. He likes disillusioned teens who, express themselves through their vehicles. Like this squad of being like disillusioned teams on the drab, brown, gray, sandy Tatooine, deciding to paint their speeder bikes bright colors and like tech mod themselves and things like that, and be like the exact opposite of their surroundings. Like just the whole car culture vibe. Like this is one of the most like George Lucas-y Star Wars things I've seen in Star Wars in a long time. So were they implemented the best in that show? Maybe not from a storytelling perspective, but as far as the concept of the mods in Book of Boba Fett, I really love it, to the extent that I kind of want like them to have their own show. I just want to I want to follow those characters more and their efforts as like young disillusioned teens on Tatooine to sort of like break out of their surroundings. I think that sounds really interesting. That storyline in a Star Wars settings. That sounds awesome.
I could not agree more. I also would like to see the cyberpunk American Graffiti in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
When I saw them, that's what I thought of. I was like, oh,
totally.
This is the Star Wars American Graffiti.
It is. I'm sure that's what it was meant to be.
Lucas film, you know? So
I'm sure that's I'm sure that there was a little bit of an homage there. That's what it certainly felt like to me. And then we just bring Thundercat back as like maybe the leader of the mods, right? He's kind of that like doctor, but he's kind of like in that vein too, right? And Thundercat makes great music, so more Thundercat. All right, let's move on that note. Wait, do we get a Thundercat card in this expansion? We've got the other Book of Boba Fett stuff. I can't remember if his character's name in Star Wars, but give me a Thundercat card. I want to see it. Anyway, we got another vanilla card here. It's a Warzone Lieutenant. 1 for a 2/2 command. That's it. 1 for a 2/2. Great stats. Great tag, cost. Has a trooper tag. Yeah, great card.
So a bit more relevant than our fringe friend.
That's true. You get 4/4 with the stats for 2 of these.
Oh, you're going to make me pronounce this next one?
Sure, go for it.
It's the
like
heavy fighter.
It's a name on a dune or something.
Yeah. I definitely said that right.
Kurats.
It's the XZ that throws me, right? Like I don't know how to say X. Kirax. I can't. My mouth doesn't want to do it.
I'm gonna go to Google Translate.
I'm just like a poor Midwestern farm boy. I can't say Kirax.
That's
probably the closest I can get.
I'm gonna.
It's that.
So I'm gonna put this name Kratz real quick in Google Translate here, and we're gonna see how they tell us to pronounce it. It says it wants to auto translate it from Kurdish.
Okay.
Hopefully it's not like a really offensive word in another language, but let's see.
Kirax.
It wants me to pronounce it Kirax.
That sounds great.
Kirax.
It's a heavy fighter.
There you go.
It's a space unit. It's 4 cost, only command as far as the aspects go. Has a 3/3 body, and it is a vehicle and a fighter. Has the overwhelm keyword, but on attack, you may exhaust another friendly unit. If you do, this unit gets +3/+0 for this attack. So it's a 3/3 overwhelm in space. But if you exhaust another friendly unit, then it gets +3/+0 and it becomes a 6/3 overwhelm. And it's an uncommon. I think because it's an uncommon, it'll actually see a hefty amount of play in limited formats because the potential of a 6/3 in space is really strong. But also, I just kind of like the idea of a card like this. If you're playing in a swarm style deck and you might have a bunch of things that only are like 1/1s, 2/2s, 1/2s, whatever, turning any of them into essentially a 3 attack power value, and with the overwhelm, it means you're also likely getting that extra value, I think is really, really neat. So I don't know if this will find a home in Constructed because it does seem a little brittle for a 4 cost. As far as like staying alive, but I think in limited it's going to see a lot of play.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's a really cool art design too for this. Apparently, I was reading up on it. It was these chips were developed for the Black Sun Syndicate. So there looks like they have a little bit of an underworld history, though. Although I suppose anyone can buy them. Yeah,
it's Shizor that's riding in there, huh?
Apparently,
that's what we're gonna say. We're gonna text Flake when we're done recording and be like, "Hey, man, we got a Shizor card."
I can feel the pheromones from here. There we go. That's a Shizor reference in case you're unfamiliar. But yeah, I think it's an interesting card. I think it's a way to maybe sneak some damage through with the Overwhelm if you want to. You can do something like exhaust a Sentinel on your side to buff it because your Sentinel, like whatever, you don't need to attack with your 2-attack Sentinel or something like that. So I think it's got some interesting uses. I don't know if it's going to make it into a bunch of constructed decks, but it's going to be a threat in limited for sure, and maybe even a little bit of aggression option in constructed. We'll see, but cool card with a cool ability. I like that. Next, Discerning Veteran, costs 5, command only. It's a 3/4, and it's a bounty hunter as well. Ooh, a command bounty hunter. Says when played, this unit captures an enemy non-leader ground unit. So there you go. Just play it. For 5, you capture something. It reminds me a little bit of Cantina Bouncer in that it also costs 5. That has a 3/5 stat line. It is double cunning, and you bounce a unit back to your opponent's hand when you play it, one of their non-leader units. This is, a little bit less powerful in that you capture it. You do remove it from play, but obviously they get it back if you lose your Discerning Veteran. Stat line is a little bit lower to reflect that. It is only command, so it's very versatile. But just in terms of having a reliable capture kind of unit, I think this is good. I look at this and I'm like, man, would I even put this in like Palpatine or something? And just add to the whole repertoire he has of removing units from play, either turning them to your side or capturing them or something like that. I kind of like it as a get one of their bodies off the board. You get a body on the board. Yeah, I think it seems like a pretty solid common. Very strong and limited.
Common, it seems outstanding.
Yeah.
I just also like the idea of having access to capture because it's a way that you can kind of abuse cards that have native bounty. Mm-hmm. So if you're playing a bounty upgrade on an opposing card, you're only going to collect that once. But if it's a card that is a bounty natively, being able to like capture that unit to trigger the bounty, and then all of a sudden your unit that captured it goes away, they get it back, and now you capture it again, you get the bounty again, or maybe you kill it the second time. But getting multiple triggers off that bounty, I think is going to be a great way to kind of extend your advantage in those games. And so just a nice, you don't have to jump through any hoops. I just play the card and I capture a unit. Seems pretty good.
Yeah, I like it. Let's move on. We have 7 cards left, I believe. We've been going, this is taking longer than I thought, but it's so many reveals. This is our big reveal episode, I guess. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. This was taking a long time, but we had the legal authority to cover these.
That's right.
Just leading in here. Legal authority is the name of the card. It is an upgrade. It costs 2. It's in command only. You attach it to a friendly unit. When played, attached unit captures an enemy non-leader unit with less power than it. It also grants +0, +2 in stats, and it has the law tag.
Law is interesting. Do we have any other law cards?
If we do, it's not many. But law stood out to me because it makes me wonder if we've kind of joked about it, but like, what if we really do get a Senate expansion later, and like, there's cards where it's like, look for laws, and that could find you this.
Yeah. I'm down for that. Like I said, I want, and then if you pass enough laws, you just win the game. Give me alternate win conditions. I'm not going to stop pushing for that. I want alternate win conditions. But yeah, I think it's another cool just sort of capture card. You can attach it to a friendly unit. It doesn't say non-vehicle or anything like that. So it works if you have space or ground out, versatile in that regard. So yeah, I think it's going to be one of the premier capture cards. And they know that it's a rare, it's going to be a really good card.
Yeah.
And if you look really close, you can see the guy from Kim's Convenience in there. I'm not actually sure. I can't zoom in far enough on the card. But I'd like to think he's in there. I can't remember his name in Star Wars, but he's played by Paul Sun-Hyung Lee.
Yeah, sorry, it's always going to be Appa to me.
Oh, there you go. He's great though. We'll assume he's in there. Hopefully he gets his own card later. All right.
Hopefully he does.
Let's move on. It is a 1-cost command event, a tactic to be specific. Outflank. Attack with 2 units, one at a time. Wow. Wow. Leia loves it.
So, yeah, I was going to say, so if you're wondering, this is just your generic Rebel Assault. So Rebel Assault, obviously, similar cost, more aspects than just command, and gives the bonus, but it has to be Rebels. This no bonus, but it's just command, and you just attack with 2 units. So really straightforward, kind of like that this card at least exists because it's going to make people have to start doing some additional math. You know, when you're playing against command decks, for example, okay, what if they have the outflank? I think most of us are used to doing that against either Green Sabine or Leia's anyway. But now this kind of broadens that spectrum, if you will. So
I think
not a lot to say. I think that if you're not playing Rebel Assault, so you're on the villainy side or whatever, then, or you're not playing Rebels, then this is probably still worth a consideration.
The people still insisting that Command Sabine is better than Cunning Sabine, they're wrong. But here they have a card that will make their deck better. So there you go. Your deck will get a little bit better. Not as good as Cunning Sabine, but it'll get a little bit better. Enjoy.
Well, if you're playing the Command Sabine, you will have potentially your own Moment of Glory. Because that's the next card. Moment of Glory. This is a 3-cost event. It is a tactic.
It's pretty
Give
huge.
a unit +4/+4 for this phase.
And it's the sequel trooper. It's TR8 TR is I think the fan community call him
the traitor.
The guy who goes traitor at Finn in The Force Awakens. There he is. Yep. He didn't really, I mean, he got beat though. So
yeah.
It wasn't really his moment of glory, was it?
I mean, he entered the zeitgeist just by having a cool weapon, which is also
moment of internet glory.
Say, you know, you were talking about how the biker gang, if you will, was like the most Star Wars thing from Book of Boba Fett. I would argue that this character and Captain Phasma are the most Star Wars things from the sequels, because Star Wars has a history of characters becoming popular just because they either have cool outfits or cool toys, right?
That's
the
fair.
whole reason that we all know who Boba Fett is because he wore cool armor in the background. It's not like he did anything.
He didn't really
This
do
guy
a
had a
lot.
cool weapon. Captain Phasma had shiny armor, and that's why we know who they are. That's it. Neither one of them did anything of real consequence, but they were the Boba Fetts of the sequels.
That is a fair assessment. But I mean, this card could be strong in certain circumstances. I think it's +4/+4 is a large buff, right? So if you are doing this to prevent one of your units from being takedowned or something like that, excuse me, it could be good for that. Preparing for a game-winning swing, unless your opponent can prevent it, because obviously they're going to get a chance to respond to this, could be good. You know, it's a common. I think it's going to be another one of those things where I would love to pick up in limited if I'm playing command, because it's just, I mean, being able to buff your unit that much in a limited scenario is going to be very strong. On the constructed side, remains to be seen. Again, just the fact that like you don't get an attack along with this right away, that you play it, your opponent has a chance to respond. They can't remove the buff because it's not an upgrade, it's an event. But they still have a chance to potentially kill the thing that you have buffed. So it's a little bit weaker from that side of things. But definitely a card to at least take note of, I think. All right, moving on to Jango Fett. There he is. Did I read the last one, or did you?
I did the last one, so I'll let you do this.
Yay! All right, I'll get Jango Fett here. What is his title? Oh, we have more than 7 left, by the way. Oh my, we have so many left actually. Holy cow, this episode is crazy. Jango Fett. He's a 4 for aggression villainy, 3/6 underworld bounty hunter. While attacking with a bounty. While attacking a unit with a bounty, this unit gets +3/+0 and gains overwhelm. Wow. When this unit attacks and defeats a unit, draw a card. Also, wow. So, yeah, I mean, 2 great abilities. I like that it fits with the theme that the Boba Fett legendary started, where it gets a 3 of something when attacking something. Boba Fett gets a +3 damage that he can throw in when he's attacking an exhausted unit that wasn't played this round, this phase. Jango Fett gets another +3 in a different way. So I like that kind of that theme is still sort of there. And I mean, when he kills a unit, you draw a card. Like, that's so good. This card is great.
This card and another card that we're going to talk about in a moment, they have me so excited to mess around with the Grand Inquisitor. This card is just ripe for being abused with Grand Inquisitor. The 6 health is massive, so if you're not activating him with Inquisitor, he's already outside of takedown range, but even if you activate him, then you're probably getting some extra damage in. If you are targeting a unit with a bounty, that's a huge attack, but even if you're not targeting a unit with a bounty, being able to play him, ready him immediately, defeat a unit, and draw a card could be very, very useful. This card is a house.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a staple in any villainy aggression list for some time to come, just on the stats alone.
I agree. Well, we're on a time crunch, so let's hurry on.
Yeah.
It's
So
Chrysanthemum.
that's the only reason I'm not going to gush further about that one. But we also have this next one, which I want to gush about, which is Chrysanthemum, Muscle for Hire. This is a 5-cost, again, villainy aggression unit. Has Underworld, Wookiee, and Bounty Hunter for tags. A 3/7 stat line, so even bigger than Jango. When played, if an enemy has a bounty, you may ready this unit. On attack, choose a ground unit. You may deal 1 damage to it for each damage on this unit. So there's a lot of interesting things going on here. One, obvious, again, Grand Inquisitor synergy, where you could play him, and if there's not a unit that already has bounty, you could use Inquisitor to ready him. And then you're also in turn turning on his on-attack ability because you're sticking some damage on him, right? But there's also scenarios where they might have a unit with bounty, so you could play him. He comes in ready, you attack the unit with bounty, and then you can ready him with Grand Inquisitor and then take out another unit because he'll have a bunch more damage on him. The on attack is going to trigger before the combat, so he can kill things without taking the damage back himself, which is a really powerful thing all on its own. He also does silly things with Energy Conversion Lab because of the way you can stack the when played. So you could have the ambush go off and then ready for a bounty, but again, have damage on him from the initial ambush for that on attack. So this card I love, and I am shocked it's an uncommon. Like, that blows my mind. This is the same rarity as that 1/4 fringe guy who
I know.
I don't even remember his name. He just makes me angry. Yeah.
It was a hold on, let's well, I'll find it later, whatever. Move on to Guild Target. 0 cost bounty. It's a bounty condition. Attached unit gains bounty, deal 2 damage to a base. If this unit is unique, deal 3 damage instead. So fits in really well with aggression. Obviously, you are going to be trading every once in a while. Again, think about this with that Bo-Katan Kryze, where you are doing damage to units, primarily. So that's another thing where it's like you use your damage on units to damage the base. So I think it fits in perfectly with that. Yeah, just another good way to damage bases.
I also think it fits perfect with Bosk.
Totally.
The Bosk Dengar package works beautifully with this as well.
Yeah, potentially doing 6 damage to a base, which is kind of crazy.
Kind of crazy. You know what else is crazy?
Whoa,
Not
another
6
Millennium
damage to a
Falcon.
base, but 6 costed Millennium Falcon. Lando's Pride. I love that after Han owned it, it got like less useful. It went from a 5/5 to a 3/4 because he was running it into the ground.
We now know exactly how many stats the little like escape pod thing in the front is worth. It's worth exactly 2 attack.
Yep, 2 attack and 1 health. So the Millennium Falcon, 6 cost, Heroism Cunning. It is a 5/5, has Underworld, Vehicle, and Transport. If you play this unit from hand, it gains Ambush. So it's a 5/5 ambush in space for 6, which is already really good in my opinion, but also has a smuggle cost of 6 with, again, Heroism and Cunning. So its smuggle cost is the same as its play cost. No like upcharge. That is wild to me. Also, this is an uncommon. So this is an uncommon, and Chrysanthemum's an uncommon, and Forgot About Fringe Boy is an uncommon, and that blows my mind.
It's we gotta find the name for it. It's
no, I like better that we don't remember his name because he's very forgettable.
That's right. It's fine. All right. Moving on. But I gotta say, dude, Falcons. It's cool to see another version of the Falcon. Remember, you can have both Falcons out at once because they have different subtitles. That's the unique rule in this: is you can't have the exact same card out. But if it's a different version of that same unique, that's fine. So neat to see.
Yeah, different subtitles. So if it's got like the Korean subtitles, you're fine.
There you go. But those are hard to find. Trust me. Well, they are now. They aren't now. They were before.
Yeah.
All right. Criminal Muscle is a 1-cost cunning 2/1 underworld unit on the ground. When played, you may return a non-unique upgrade to its owner's hand. So, you played a bounty on something, and you're like, I'm not going to be able to kill that thing, but I could kill this other thing this turn. I'm going to bounce that bounty back to my hand. It costs 0. I'm going to play it on this other thing that I'm about to kill. So that's the use I think of right away for it. But a lot of other uses for that, sure, as well.
I think of it very quickly as a low cost, like I can pull an experience token or a shield off something.
That too, yeah.
It's a 2/1 for 1, and I get to plink off a shield or an experience token. That seems pretty good to me.
Yeah, I think it'll be really good. All right, moving on. Go ahead. It's your turn. I'm so tired right now.
Frontier Trader. So this is a 3-cost ground unit, cunning, 2/2 stat line, fringe, and Jawa. When played, you may return a resource you control to its owner's hand. If you do, you may put the top card of your deck into play as a resource. So kind of like a reverse smuggle, where instead of playing it from your resources, you're just taking something back from the resource into your hand and then replacing it with the top card of your deck.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a pretty useful sort of cycle maneuver type thing to do, and it's another Jawa, so we're one step closer to the Oops All Jawas deck, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're a little bit less worried about what you're resourcing if you're running these guys, and I think that's not a bad idea. I think especially, again, in Limited, too, where you have a deck that's kind of all over the place. A couple of these wouldn't be that bad to just get some of that stuff back for late game. Kind of like it for that. All right. Boba Fett's armor. Check it out. It does look cool. It was cool enough to spawn a whole like essentially race of characters in Star Wars franchises, all off of this cool armor design. Cost 2. It's cunning. It's a item. It's armor. It gives you +2/+2 attached to a non-vehicle unit. Of course, if attached unit is Boba Fett and damage would be dealt to him, prevent 2 of that damage. That's a very unique ability in the game so far. Is blanket damage reduction. I don't think we've seen that before. And in fact, I really don't think we've seen that before at all. So yeah, it just makes Boba Fett a little bit more buff, right? Great on the Boba Fett leader himself. If you want to build like a Voltron Boba Fett deck, this is going to be a good key piece of that. Otherwise, if you want to just put it on, your regular legendary Boba Fett, it's going to be strong too.
Yeah, I am most scared about this ending up on the leader, just because if it goes on the 3-drop, at least right now, I'm somewhat pacified because calculated lethality is a thing.
Sure.
So there are at least answers that exist, though. Again, making that unit massive and making it that much harder to kill is already scary enough. But on the leader, when you're going to take him up to 9 health and you're preventing damage, and with that 9 health, you can't take down, right? So you're going to have to get damage on him, but now that damage is prevented before you can do the takedown.
You're right.
I don't know. I'm kind of hoping we get some other leader removal. It would have to be on the expensive side, obviously, but right now I'm looking at this and I'm like, well, super laser blast, I guess, is, when I get to 9 resources, maybe that's how I deal with it.
Power
Obviously,
failure.
Upgrade
Power
removal.
failure.
So you can, you can get rid of the upgrade. That's one way around it, and so forth. But yeah, just on paper, this looks very scary.
Totally agree. But I like that we have support for, because this really does, like you said, feel like support for the set 1 Boba Fett leader, and it can be good for the set 2 Boba Fett as well. It's not in aspect with the new Boba Fett, because that one was Heroism Command. But the old Boba Fett's fine, and I like new cards that are very much support for old leaders. That's neat.
Hey, speaking of new cards that support old leaders, here's a card that supports kind of everything if you're running Imperials. Incinerator Trooper. This is in the starter deck. It is a 2-cost villainy unit on the ground. It is a 2/2 stat line. Has Imperial and Trooper tags. Makes sense because it's an Incinerator Trooper. But while attacking, this unit deals combat damage before the defender. So this is essentially a small version of Han Solo, which is outstanding, especially in Imperial. I saw this and I was like, man, that card with like Tarkin, where you can start jamming a bunch of stuff on him, is going to make that a nightmare. So yeah, it's only a 2/2 for 2, which is a bit undercosted, but it's because the upside is massive.
Yeah, I mean, when you buff it, like you said, it's going to be really, really scary. Just a great way for Imperial units to trade with non-Imperial units or other Imperial units. Who knows? But I like that this is a thing. It obviously was a scary unit in the scene from Mandalorian where it shows up in the first season. So makes sense that it's one of the premier Moff Gideon starter deck cards. Very cool. And like you said, applicable to other Imperial stuff. So I like that about it too. Moving on. Speaking of Mandalorian season 1, and rest in peace, Carl Weathers. It's very sad that we're not going to get to see him come back and do more of this role, because he was awesome as the one and only Greef Karga, represented here in card form. Pure heroism, 2 for a 2/2, fringe official. When played, search the top 5 cards of your deck for an upgrade, reveal, and draw it. So he's a heroism upgrade searcher, which is interesting. I wonder. I mean, I guess you could put him in Bo-Katan and then make him a Mandalorian. You could do that. Yeah. That's an option. But I think if you're playing a heroism upgrade focused deck, it's going to be a card that you're going to want to seriously consider improving. It's a starter card for the Mandalorian deck, which makes sense in a lot of thematic ways. But again, just in terms of the set mechanics, I think, could see it in a lot of upgrade decks.
Yeah, I like the theme of this card because it can like find you weapons to give to your fighters, or it can find you bounties, right? Because he also gave Mando bounties, so yeah, he fits both ends of the spectrum. Also, just funny looking card. Was really surprised we got one of these. Protector of the Throne is the next one we're going to talk about.
There you go. Yeah.
Protector of the Throne is a 3-cost ground unit, only in heroism. Is a 2/4 stat line with the Mandalorian tag. While this unit is upgraded, it gains Sentinel.
It feels like the heroism answer to the Royal Guard to a certain extent. With a Mandalorian flavor, of course. A well-statted unit that gains conditional Sentinel. So it's kind of neat.
For the folks who are wondering, this comes from like when Mandalore was still a thing. Like this was kind of like the Mandalorian Royal Guard. That's why they look different. But now that I've seen this, and now that there's like, you know, all of the expanded lore and subculture, I want like a Mandalorian to show up in the Mandalorian show, but like with this helmet, and be like, this is the thing I have to wear all day. Why did you take yours off if I can handle it?
Fair enough. I mean, if anyone's still wearing that around the universe after the fall of Mandalore, they must really be like stuck inside of it, because try walking through a door with that thing. It's not going to be easy. Right. Yeah. But it's a cool look though. It's neat. I wonder if they jumped off of something, if they would just glide down.
Maybe.
I don't know how much lift that helmet has, but we'll see. Either way, next we go to a heroism only card, Smuggler's Aid. Heal 3 damage to your base, or smuggle for 3. Heal 3 damage to your base. I think this is just a nice healing card for heroism stuff, right? It's essentially a repair, right? Although it's base only, so it's a little bit more limited, because I believe repair is unit or base, if I remember right. Yep. But the smuggle allows you to resource it early when you don't need to heal that base, and then later on when you do need that healing, you can pop it out of your resources. So I think it's extremely useful in that particular category if you want to play a slower deck that relies on healing. This is going to be a card that definitely goes in it if you're on the heroism side.
Yeah. Thanks. I hate it.
Yeah, I know.
That's the only thing I can say as an aggressive player.
Yeah, I mean, I do feel like the game, and I think this is by intent, is being pushed towards the mid-range, which is okay. I think that's where games like this really shine, where you have to make a lot of onboard trading decisions. Just like, you know, kind of like Hearthstone was back in the day. It was when it was its best. It was best when it was all about trading units properly on the board. That was where it became the most fun. So I don't mind it getting pushed to the mid-range. This and a lot of other cards definitely do that, but you know, I'm tentatively okay with that. even though my aggro heart does bleed a little bit too.
Next up, we have Mandalorian Warrior. This is a neutral card. It is a 3-cost ground unit, has the Mandalorian tag, obviously. It's a 3/3. When played, you may give an experience token to another Mandalorian unit. For a common that's neutral, I actually think this is pretty good.
Yeah, great and limited, right? I mean, if you're going to be trying to build some Mandalorian decks with that, and then also in constructed even, you know, on I won't even say until better Mandalorian cards come along, because it's a well-statted card and you give an experience to another Mandalorian, I think it's going to find some usefulness in just straight-up Mandalorian constructed decks too, which is unique for a neutral unit, isn't it? So it's cool to see.
Yeah, it's very likely a 4/4 in stats for 3 cost, and because it's giving an experience token, you're giving out an upgrade, and we know Mandalorians care about that. So just really flexible. I dig it.
Yeah, and the Mandalorian trait, which is useful in itself too. You can do things to it that will be useful too. So yeah, cool neutral. And then our final card, we've reached the end. It is a rich reward. Do we get a rich reward for covering all these? I don't know. We'll find out soon. But it costs 1. It's a bounty condition. Attached unit gains bounty. Give an experience token to each of up to 2 units. So good neutral bounty. Throw in there. Get some experience tokens. 2/2 in stats for 1 cost. Potentially good. Throw it in any bounty deck.
Yeah. It's a common. I like it. I don't know that I would draft it early because I care more about bodies, but I'm not upset if I have to include it. Not much else to say, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, I like that we have neutral bounties too, because a lot of the other bounties are aspected, and so, you know, you're going to have to leave some of them behind depending on what you choose for your leader in your base. But you're always going to have this one, and experience tokens are always something that you enjoy seeing come in, so that's good. But yeah, that brings us to the end of the reveals. This has been a marathon episode. Lately, we've been really trying to keep our episodes less than an hour in length, and we are at about an hour 40, I think, right now. But we made it through.
It's a long one. Well, and it doesn't help that like we took detours. We're not feeling well.
We can't help it.
If you made it this far, you are a trooper.
Seriously.
You deserve the trooper tag.
You do.
You get that upgrade. I just decree it.
Yeah. By royal decree. He's wearing the big funny helmet. If you're listening to this on podcast, you can't say it, but trust me, it's really there. But yeah, that's it. Don't forget, you can go to invasioncnc.ca and use Ice Cave 5 to get 5% off Star Wars Unlimited singles and 3% off sealed product. They ship anywhere in North America, so don't be afraid. Go get stuff. And thanks a lot to all of our Patreon subscribers. I wasn't able to post any sort of local reports or anything last week because of traveling and stuff like that. I'm feeling a little bit better today, so I'm hoping I feel well enough to go to my store championship tomorrow night. And I don't know how well I'm going to play at this point, but I'm going to go and give it a shot anyway. And hopefully I'll have a local report for you after that. I know Flake's been posting stuff. You have as well. So a lot going on the Patreon for our patrons as well.
Actually, I haven't posted mine yet. I have started writing it, but I have not published it because I got sick before I could finish it. It's the same reason why our website hasn't been published yet. It's like 75% done. Both of them are, and then I got sick. So
everything's getting sidetracked. Stupid organic bodies. We need those superior droid bodies, I guess. Well, on that note, also join our Discord because a lot of great, honestly, awesome conversation going constantly about deck building there. But I'm going to sign off. That's it. I'm going to let you sign off instead. You got the line. You know what to do. Just do it.
May the Force be with you.